Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Andile Khumalo, and welcome to the 10th and final installment of the 10-part webinar series, Survive and Thrive, of course, brought to you by the Allan Umbrella Retirement Fund, guys. What a team, what a journey it has been in bringing you all of this, all the way from deep in lockdown. And we've had 9 webinars, and today is our 10th and final one. Now, of course, the world is looking a little bit different today. Things are looking a little bit better. The US elections are done. Pfizer said they're close to a vaccine, but of course, we're not through it yet. There's lots of signs of a resurgence in the US and even in other parts of Europe. And we heard the president of South Africa yesterday warning us of such as well here locally. However, life has to somehow go on, I guess. And after such a tough year that we've had, and we've had to learn how to make sense of it all, we've been bringing you business people who've helped us look at life and our own businesses through lens of some optimism. And today is no different with the panelists that we've got today. And today we're going to focus a lot more on what does the future hold and how do we position our own businesses for success in the future. As you all know, in this series, we call on these industry experts to share their own strategy blueprints. And today we are going to get a peek into some of South Africa's greatest entrepreneurs and business leaders into their own thoughts about their own strategies on how to get through this and, of course, set their business up for success. Our title and theme for today is Positioning Your Business for Success. In case you missed the last 9 webinars, where have you been? But if you want to go and catch them, www.allangray.co.za is the website you go to. And as you land on the website, you will see a pop-up page for a COVID-19 message. And in there, you will see the Survive and Thrive link. Click on that, and that'll take you to a dedicated page that's got all sorts of stuff, all the recordings from the previous webinars, all of the resources that have come from the different webinars, recommendations on books, even articles, and even other videos that you might enjoy that will help you kind of manage your time through this very difficult period that we've had. In terms of housekeeping rules, if you do experience any technical issues during the live webinar, please go to Zoom Help. If that doesn't work out for you, it typically works for you to kind of get out of the link and go and click back on the same link again. That tends to refresh everything and tends to sort everything out. If you've got any live questions, this is the place to be. Now, I totally expect a lot of live questions from you. So much so that I've planned to dedicate a lot more questions for you guys, because we do have some of the best business leaders we've all come across in our working lives. And you're going to do that quite easily. At the bottom of your screen is the Q&A tab. You just type your question, you press enter. I will be getting it on my side, and I'll be putting it to the relevant people. If you've got a question for a specific panelist of mine, all you need to do is just tell me who it is, and of course, I will pose it to them. We've also got some questions from registration that we'll be putting up as well. You will get a recording of this presentation today on your email, so look out for those. And of course, for those that are needing CPD points, as good as today's webinar is, you will unfortunately not be earning any CPD points today. Now, let me introduce you to our guests for today, if they could also join me with their videos as well. Natasha Sideris is the CEO and founder of the Tashas Group. She opened her first restaurant in 2005, and today there are 17 Tashas located in South Africa, another 5 in the UAE, and following on the success of the franchise, Natasha has created 3 additional restaurant concepts, and I'm sure there are many more to come with a little bit of insight I've certainly had in how her mind works. Next up is Koseff, my former boss. He's the former CEO of Investec Group. He's currently the chairman of Food Services Group Bidcorp and a director of the Industrials Group Abad Group, and also co-chair of the Youth Employment Service. In 2017, he was awarded an honorary doctorate of commerce degree by the University of Witwatersrand, that's WITS. He's also a non-executive director for Investec Australia Property Fund, which is where he's joining us from today. And lastly, but definitely not least, is the current Group Chief Executive Officer of MTN Group. His name is Mupita, having joined the company in 2007 as CFO. Following a stint as CEO of Old Mutual Emerging Markets, he's been instrumental in stabilizing MTN Group's financial performance, was also named CFO of the Year in 2019, and of course is now the #1 man in charge of the multinational group that remains Africa's largest mobile operator. All of you guys are welcome. I'm so happy that you guys are here. As I did say in my intro, and also when I spoke to you guys individually, we've had 9 of these webinars. We started back in deep lockdown back in June, and we've been talking just about how all of us survive. Most of us that are on this webinar are owners of medium-sized businesses. Most of those businesses are domiciled in South Africa. And we've been having these sessions just for us to get more and more insights from people to help us kind of not be overwhelmed by what's happening and start thinking about the future. And this final one was where we saved the big guns, and that'll be to you guys. So there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of insights. Please feel free. It's a very comfortable chat. You can butt in, and I will be butting in some of the things that you are saying. But we are really looking for your own personal lessons in what the year that has been, and also your thoughts about the years that are to come, both for yourselves and also the businesses that you lead. And maybe let me start there, lady and gentlemen, by asking you to share with us your own experience of the year. We've had the outbreak of COVID-19, the impact that it's had, the uncertainty that it's created, the displacements that it's caused, the impact on businesses that you are involved in. Where is your headspace now with all that's happening in South Africa and abroad? How do you see the businesses that you are involved in better positioning themselves for the future? And let me start perhaps with you, Natasha. It's always ladies first.
Firstly, thank you for having me on. I'm a little bit intimidated by Ralph and Stephen. They've got all fancy degrees. I'm just a restaurateur. I do have a degree in psychology though, so I have to put that in there. Guys, listen, Andile, what can we say? It's been a very tough year. I think that no one expected the impact, certainly in our industry, who's been one of the worst hit industries. And I know a lot of people reflect on their own business and say, well, you know, our industry was badly hit. But I think restaurants really have taken a hard knock. And as you can see in Europe, are now closed again. And I don't see a lot of them being able to recover. So I think what we did early on is we gave our guys, our head office team, 3 or 4 days just to digest what had happened. And then we were having Zoom meetings literally nearly every day. So I think one of the big lessons is communication. You know, I play a dual role. I'm both a franchisor and a franchisee. So I'm able to understand what the issues are on the ground for our franchisees. So we got everyone in a room, so to speak, and just rallied together to decide how we were going to get through this. And we did a couple of things, and I've just summarized them into two things. One is operational efficiencies are absolutely key. So for the restaurant business, you have to make sure that you're operationally lean. And I think a lot of guys in the food business where margins were already quite tight would look at the situation and say, oh, well, you know, there's nothing I can do about it. But, you know, when your back's against the wall and you have to do something about it and you're about to lose your business, you take a long, hard look at some of your operational efficiencies or rather inefficiencies. You know, Stephen asked me earlier on when we were prepping for this is what did we do with our menus? So for restaurants, I would absolutely say if you haven't cut down your menu and you've managed to survive COVID, you're one of the lucky ones. Because cutting down your menu means less stock, a leaner buying, and of course, you know, you don't need as many people to be making the product. Other things we did with clever purchasing, going to suppliers and, you know, negotiating for settlements when we started trading again, saying to the guys, listen, if we settle you a little bit early with some savings that we've got, will you give us discounts? Of course, the big one was negotiating with landlords, not only for the immediate relief, but negotiating leases that were going to ensure future protection. You know, not just saying, you know, give us 6 or 7 months, help us now, because the impact of this thing is still yet to be seen. We don't know how far reaching it's going to be, how far into the future it's going to be affecting our businesses. And there's so much uncertainty, you don't even know if we're going to go into a second lockdown. And then obviously focusing massively, not that we weren't focusing on it before, but I think anyone in the F&B industry who isn't focusing highly on hygiene as a visible aspect in their businesses is going to lose market share. So that was one of the things that we really focused on, having the boards outside, letting people know that we're taking it seriously, taking people's temperatures, trying to maintain the social distancing as much as possible. You know, it's human nature to become a little bit more relaxed. So now just reminding the guys, hang on a second, don't get relaxed. Make sure you're keeping your tables spread apart. What I'm quite happy about in terms of being, you know, sort of cautiously optimistic about the future, I wrote something down here when this had all started. And I said, I hope that there'll still be a place for sit-down restaurants in the future. My very real fear is that it will become a thing of the past and we turn into a nation of fast food deliveries and takeaways. And thank God we haven't, because what we've seen is as we opened our doors, although it was trickling in slowly because people were still scared. I mean, Dubai is a completely different story. It's as if the market's just gone back to normal. People are out and about, they're wearing their masks and they're being careful, but it's stabilized completely. And in some cases, our turnovers are up. But certainly in South Africa, I think restaurants are a fabric of our society. It's where we go to socialize. It's where we go to meet our friends. It's where we go to do business deals. So I'm happy to see that people are still supporting. And then the other thing, besides the operational efficiencies, is of course the need to be agile and ready for a second lockdown. So I think people shouldn't get too comfortable. So now you've managed to rescue your business, you've cut down your menu, you've tweaked your labor model, you've made sure that your shifts are different, you've maybe realized that you don't need to be keeping your restaurant open till 11, 12 o'clock at night, you're closing it a little bit earlier because you actually don't need to stay open. Agility is really important while still making sure that you are true to your brand. So one of the things that we swore we'd never do is takeaways, and we now are on the delivery platforms. My food is going into a takeaway box. And actually,
do you hate that? Bother you? Does that make you want to?
It did bother me because I want food fresh on order, and I want the customer. I want to make the food, put it on a plate, and I want you to eat it. So I didn't want it to go in the takeaway box. But it's something that we tried, and it's worked out. And it's become quite a big part of our business in Dubai. It's almost 17% of our sales. In South Africa, sitting at about 12%. So it's significant. And the thing then is, how do you differentiate? How do you make sure that your packaging is great? So now we go the next step and we start investigating better packaging, more sustainable packaging, and how do we deliver the Tashas experience to you? And one of the other things that my franchisee actually brought to me, George Betzakos in Morningside, he wanted to do this deli fridge because he said people don't want to be post-lockdown. They want to go in, grab something and leave. And I was like, we are never going to do that. Anyway, I conceded. I gave him a chance to do it, and it's shooting the lights out. So I think you have to be a little bit agile and be able to pivot. And then, of course, guys in the restaurant industry should be saving any cash that they've got because they don't know what's coming around the corner. Just last night, we were just waiting. Well, there's no, it's already quite a lean profit margin, and then you have some really good months that depend on season, and then other months are not so great. So if you look at Dubai, for example, we've got 6 months of great trade, 6 months not so great. So you really have to be very careful with your cash and your cash flow. And I would say that, if you were saving 15, 20, 25% retention in your business before, you really got to up that. You got to look at your own standards of living, and you got to be able to save money, because if another lockdown does come or restrictions get even stricter, you need the cash to be able to survive. That's the only thing that's going to get you through.
Yep.
So those are the two things. And then the final thing is communication, just to be able to communicate with your staff and your team members.
We're going to come back to your thoughts on going forward. I'm very interested in what you think is going to happen to the restaurant, if only selfishly for myself, because I do enjoy it, particularly Tashas. Stephen, let me come to you because you bring a different dynamic to this conversation. You are an experienced business leader. You led Investec for many years, decades upon end, and recently stepped down as CEO, chairman of Bidcorp, on the board of Bud, the Bud Group. And you're looking at things slightly from a different perspective. You've been through kind of different things that have happened in the world of business in terms of crises, the global financial crises, the kind of dot-com bubbles. When you look back and forward, what are your thoughts?
So obviously this was a very different crisis because it was more a human crisis. It wasn't a financial crisis. Obviously there are many financial consequences, but the financial infrastructure of the world, which was threatened in 2008, was very comfortable going through this crisis because their balance sheets had been fixed up. The regulators and the central banks provided immediate support in terms of liquidity, things that they didn't do in 2008, so that they had very sound balance sheets and liquidity that enabled them to carry on through this crisis. But there was obviously a massive effect on individuals, on small businesses, on certain types of sectors, like Natasha was talking about. She was in the line of fire, being a restaurant, because leisure got terribly hit. Obviously, tech and some other stuff, other sorts of industries had a big benefit from the crisis. So you had a lot of winners and losers, but it's very, very different, very different to some of the other crises where there was a loss of confidence. The world was put on stop. as soon as there was a relaxation of the lockdowns, you saw pent-up demand come back. And that's probably because the financial infrastructure wasn't broken, and because there was quite a lot of support from governments in terms of, in a place in South Africa, you had TERS, in Australia, you had JobKeepers, in the UK, you had something else, but all sorts of schemes that enabled people to stay employed or get paid while they were furloughed. And I think that's where one of the problems may be coming down the road, when you start weaning everyone off those schemes. But I think Natasha made a lot of very valid points. What I've seen, okay, is, one of the businesses I chair is a food service business. It's a very large food service business. It's very global. And you can see that it was operating in China. And we saw early stages when China's lockdown ended, pent-up demand actually came back very, very quickly. And you've seen that in all the markets in which they operate. As soon as lockdown ends, so you see demand, and that's why Natasha's fear of people not going to restaurants, I don't think she has to worry. People want to get back to normal. They want to get out, but they're a bit more cautious, so maybe you'll have slightly lower turnover. All of them, all the businesses that I'm involved in, the others are South African businesses, industrial services. The first thing was, let's contain, let's make sure we have cash to get to the other side. That was the first thing, is how do we manage our balance sheet, but how do we also look after our core stakeholders, which are our people, our suppliers, and our customers, and balancing the impact on all three of them, including, I suppose, including society at large. And that's where, they really had to be pivot. The first thing they do, no more capex for a while, or they'll do only essential capex. They'll do deals with landlords if necessary. They'll do deals with suppliers if necessary. They'll, try and help customers that are in need by giving them special terms so that they know the customer's still there when life normalizes. And I think that, that's right. All the industries that I've had exposure to over this last while have operated exactly on that basis, is trying to help so that when you get through this, and we will get through it, you still have a business. And Natasha used Simon Sinek's word, pivot. How do you pivot? And that's very important, is you can't just sit and say, I've always done this, I'm going to carry on doing it. I think what COVID did bring was, digital probably 5 years earlier than it would have come, where you got people of 90 having to go and get online capability. So you saw those businesses that support online and anything linked to online, like laptops and all those kind of things, poof, boomed, once they were able to sell. So I do think that people are very adaptable. But anyone who had a weak, and that Natasha also mentioned, you must make sure you have a lot of cash. Or that you conserve cash, because you don't know when this thing is actually coming back.
On that point of cash, the other business you're involved with, which you were leading for so long, is a bank. And a lot of South African banks have been under a lot of strain and pressure and criticism for not supporting small businesses enough during that time. You understand the banking sector a lot more than most. What is your take about the criticism of the government support structures, the guarantee structures, and just the general approach of banking in supporting business?
So I was involved in the original design of the guarantee scheme. I think that one of the issues was it maybe was a few weeks late. The second issue was maybe the initial terms were a bit too stringent, because the rules were, if people were okay at the end of Feb, then you can deal with them as if it was an ordinary course, but you still ask for suretyships and all that kind of stuff, and because that was the design of the scheme. So I think that put people off, because they said, listen, I've lost a lot of money. You got to give me a chance to survive. I'm not signing personally. I don't want to put more of my personal wealth at stake, or I need to continue to survive. And maybe if this doesn't work, start something else. So I think that might have been the initial challenge, where the banks had already also provided a significant amount of relief in the form of extension, interest holidays, capital repayment holidays. So I think that side of it is missed. I think one of the challenges of the scheme was it was designed for bank clients, and some of the problems or the people who feel that they weren't looked after are not bank clients. They deal in a different market. So there's an SME service provider or something like that who didn't have access to the scheme. And they will redesign it to try and make sure that, some of it should have been probably equity. Originally, we wanted to, take equity stakes. But again, that's also quite difficult when you've got a very small business. They're not used to governance. People do what they want to do every day. Sometimes the money doesn't get banked, and they sort of live off the business. And so it's very hard to have an equity partner. So that was also part of the difficulty. But I think there was also a lot less demand than that was anticipated, because people didn't want to take the extra risk of this COVID thing really, staying on forever.
Which to say is a function of how the thing was designed. It asked for that more risk.
Sorry?
I'm saying, to be fair, it was because of the way the thing was designed. It asked me to put my personal surety. It asked for security.
So I think that in phase 2, they relaxed on that.
Okay.
But perhaps at that point in time, it was too late.
Too late.
Because the businesses are already, those that were going to survive were already okay, and the others that are already, shut shop. Exactly. So it was tragic. But and I think that, when I go back to 2008, what the regulators, central banks, and the treasuries learned in 2008 was you cannot be slow on support. And that's why if you look at the developed world, the support came very, very quickly. And that's why we didn't end up with a financial crisis.
Very interesting.
The worst kind of crisis is actually a financial crisis.
Very interesting. We'll come back to that when we start looking into the future. Ralph, let me bring you in here. Stephen's already touched on some of the things that are the trending hashtags at your results announcement, things like digital, fintech, etc. From your vantage point, you've taken over as CEO of MTN Group, our largest telecommunications operator on the continent, and then COVID-19 happens. Your take?
No, Andile, I mean, it's as Natasha and Stephen have said, I mean, it was very profound changes that happened. And in many respects, what we've seen in the last couple of months is an acceleration of the digital society. Maybe what we thought would happen in 5 years' time has happened literally in a month or two. So what happened, for us at MTN Group, as we moved from February into March, from having 100% of our force, our staff at the office, we went down to anywhere between 10 to 20%. And actually, we've remained largely there, even to this day. Obviously, trying to get the social distancing in place and looking at how do we actually change our product offering, particularly to SME clients. And I'll talk a little bit about that. But, for us, we're at the other end of, providing solutions to social distancing, where we've seen a significant surge in the use of communication services and digital services. So in South Africa and across our markets, we've seen, 100% plus type increases in data usage. Now, our revenue doesn't exactly grow by 100 because we've had to offer a lot of freebies and promotional offers in the period. But I would say a couple of things. I think the first thing that we've noticed is, kind of unbunking myths that we had before. So the idea of work from home is something that we've now seen as something that, actually will be almost normal going forward, or at least a proportion of our staff who will, permanently actually just work from home. They have the communication collaboration tools that allow them to engage, with colleagues, from their home situation. And some people actually are preferring that. We're seeing also that enterprises, the likes of businesses that Natasha runs, is that they are looking at, kind of reconfiguring their businesses.
Yeah.
So we're seeing lots of, or particularly the SMMEs coming to us and asking, for example, can we get prepaid solutions? We don't want to do a postpaid arrangement because we want to manage our cash, and we're able to give them the right kind of bundle offers that ordinarily would have given those to individuals. We're now giving them to corporate. A lot of people shifting from being postpaid into prepaid, as well as because of the work from home arrangements, people coming to us for typical kind of cloud solutions, give us the connectivity, but on top of the connectivity, give us the collaboration tools. And if we want to use the name Microsoft, so give us Microsoft Office with Microsoft Teams so we can do the collaboration. And then we're seeing SMEs coming to us also asking for financing or working with banks. So we're actually working with banks to be able to deliver, solutions, to particularly SME clients. So we've seen, a radical, kind of convergence to digitalization. People who previously didn't have online offerings. Natasha spoke about her kind of, shift now to online. Is that we're seeing a move where people are saying they're going to be offline and online. We're seeing a move which is, work from home, almost being, in some roles being permanent. And people saying, we now need the connectivity tools to enable that. And also we're seeing, quite a much more distributed workforce. Now, one interesting thing is that, if you asked me a year ago, could you have call centers, people, can you run a call center outside of a typical, large kind of, building form of a call center? We're running our call centers, from home. People are enabled with the tools, and they're able to do all the work that previously they had to come to the office to do. And, provided they have the tools, they have the power, because, in South Africa, and in the rest of Africa, we sometimes have power outages, so people need power. But, if you told somebody that you can run a call center without any kind of, being in a physical building, people would have said, you're crazy. It's happening today. So when you dial in and you want to speak to an MTN call center agent, they're pretty much sitting at home. And some of those shifts are not going to come back. So I think one of the things, Andile, is that people often think about, we're going to go back to a normal. Yeah. And I would argue that the normal people think about is not, kind of a return to pre-COVID. As somebody recently said, I think it was in the FT, where they said, actually, we've got to think about COVID-19 as having a similar economic impact to a war. To Stephen's point, there's been, there's a human tragedy element to COVID-19, but generally after wars, the economic structure actually changes. If you go back to World War I, World War II, or other wars. And I think what we'll see in the future is that having a digital proposition, having a distributed workforce, is going to be, pretty much the new normal. And I think, we as at MTN, are kind of well positioned within our own business to be able to offer clients the kind of end-to-end solution they need for their connectivity services.
What does that do, Ralph? What is that acceleration of the 5 years that you and Stephen have touched on of just how quickly, right, we all now having a life that's online and offline? What does that do for a business that I guess your whole industry has had to go through somewhat of an evolution? When MTN launched way back in the 90s, I guess, it was a telephony proposition, just a telephony. Just I pick up the phone, I dial, I get it on my phone. Yeah. Then data kind of came, and data was growing at kind of exponential. But there was a whole conversation about voice dropping, and then suddenly everybody wants digital access, and they want it right now. Yeah. And then you got to think about what the future then means for MTN as a group. What then becomes of MTN the group? Clearly, it's not going to be just telephony. Clearly, it's not just the small mix of data and telephony. It's something else. You as the leader of this business, what does that mean strategically for you? What does that war, that world war impact mean in terms of changing your new normal?
Yeah, for us, as you say, we've been largely a connectivity business. So allowing people to be able to talk and actually, providing the connectivity for other services that people would want, because connectivity in of itself is not the end game. It is the services that sit on top of the connectivity that I think people really value. So, for example, where we sit as MTN, we are investing, a lot in our connectivity business. We spend $2 billion across our markets investing in the connectivity business. But on top of that, we're actually pushing ahead on the services layer. So we're pushing quite aggressively on financial services. We have over 42 million financial services clients across the business. We have about 270 million subscribers. So we're pushing financial services as a service that sit on top of connectivity. The other is really around, kind of instant messaging and the ability in instant messaging to create what some people call chat commerce, the ability to connect small little businesses to the customer bases that we have who want to do, to trade and, and building a merchant ecosystem. So, we're looking at, chat commerce and messaging. And then there are obviously other areas that we look at, we call it rich media service, the ability to deliver media services such as music, gaming, and video. And actually what's been interesting during this period of COVID is we've seen particularly gaming and video actually, surge. Still small within the MTN kind of services offering, but we've seen a surge there. So to your question, how are we pivoting? We are pivoting, to use Natasha's terminology, from just being a connectivity business to connectivities and services. And in providing those services, for sure, we're not going to do everything ourselves. We'll partner with others. But, this is accelerating, probably 5 years faster than we thought, driven predominantly by COVID effects.
Perfect, loud and clear. Guys, let me turn to you who is attending this lovely webinar. I see many of you already joined in. I'm going to put out our first poll of the day, just to get a temperature feel of where you guys are at. You've heard from our panelists about where they are at and the kind of year they've had, and also some of the pivoting that's happening in all of their environments. Let's put up the first poll, guys, if you don't mind. And the first poll is asking you, the way that my business is currently, this is now your business, we are being conservative, maintaining what we have, and just trying to survive. That's one perspective. The other is we are optimistic, open for new opportunities, and positioning our business for growth. Where is your head space? Where is your heart space? Please pick the one that you think reflects your kind of mood lately, and let's get a good sense of where everybody is right now. Please feel free also to keep sending me your questions. I see I've got a few already that I'm going to go straight after this poll and put them to the panelists before I send the field in with mine as well. Can I get the result of the poll? There it is. 78% of you are optimistic and open for new opportunities and positioning your business for growth. That is great. There is a 22%, of course, that's a little bit more conservative, and I guess that's also understandable. Let me go to some of the questions that already come through so far in our chat, and then we'll pick up the rest of our conversation because, guys, I want to talk about growth later on. If there's one thing closest to a silver bullet that every entrepreneur, big business leader wants, is an economy that's growing. And we haven't had that luck in South Africa for a long time. And all of you are running businesses across the world, but a lot of your businesses are still very indexed to South Africa. Ralph, South Africa is your second largest market. Stephen, all the business you're involved in kind of started in South Africa and still have very strong kind of South African roots and operations, even though they're global. And Natasha, 17 of 22 restaurants are also in South Africa. So I want to talk about SA Inc. a little bit, because we as entrepreneurs don't often think through what the things that should be done to help us with a customer that's out there that's willing to pay in a business community that's busy. But let me go first to Dennis. Dennis Naidu says, hello, Natasha, Dennis Naidu here. What is the impact of COVID to your international expansion plans? And 2, have you considered how technology can assist in operational efficiencies, which you referred to earlier on?
Sure. So let me answer the first one. We actually finished our business planning session yesterday, and the simple answer is we are planning for growth. Obviously, Andile, when you look at that poll, we are optimistic about the future because, as Stephen says, this thing is going to pass. And I think, you've got to be planning for the future, but with a little bit of cautiousness, and being conservative with the businesses that you have. But in terms of international growth, we are certainly not slowing down. We're opening in Saudi Arabia next year. We're looking at opening in the UK. Obviously, planning to open in the UK. And as soon as COVID, settles down or passes, or the vaccine is in place, then we can press the button on that. But certainly the planning is in place, and we're almost just getting ready to be able to launch there. So all the preparedness and everything else is happening. So yes, certainly we have growth plans. I recently bought my business back from Famous Brands. So I said to someone, I didn't buy it back just to have what I've got. I bought it back to be able to grow. And I actually bought it back during the pandemic and the lockdown. My plan is to grow the business. And just to answer the second question, I'm an old school operator. I don't really love technology that much, and I try to resist it. In fact, I don't even have Instagram on my cell phone. I don't even know how Facebook works. So I'm a bit of a dinosaur in that regard. However, I do think that we are going to see technology in restaurants more and more. People do want to have QR codes. They are ordering off their phone. And I think then in terms of efficiencies, people have got their menus on their phone. They can order directly. They don't even have to have an interaction with a staff member if they don't want to. And they can click and pay on their phone. So I certainly think there will be more and more technology entering into restaurants. And again, it depends on the brand. Certainly, I've got Flamingo Room, and I've got another concept in the business district here in Dubai that doesn't call for that type of technology, because it's more fine dining and it's a white tablecloth, and you're not going to be on your phone. But certainly for Tashas, which is a more high-paced environment, or another brand that we're developing, technology will play a part. So I think it's also going to come down to what is the brand.
On that note of you buying back your business, because I had a question planned for later, but let's deal with it now.
Okay. Yeah.
So I recall when the Famous Brand announcement came, and I can see Ralph smiling and Stephen too. I recall thinking, oh, what a great story. This entrepreneur, this lovely lady, has built this business, got this big brother, and there was talk of operational efficiencies and economies of scale, and it just made so much sense.
Correct.
And you and I talk in like April, and we talk about just how tough restaurants are having. And then in August, this lady buys the business back. I'm thinking, is there a message there for all the entrepreneurs on this call? Should we be thinking that maybe at these rough times, there could be shareholders that are more institutional, bigger brothers and sisters, who may be looking for a sources of cash, or looking at non-core, whatever that becomes for big corporates? Is it an opportune time? Is Natasha telling us something here that we should be maybe just making some calls and potentially buying some of those shareholders out?
I think certainly in the time of crisis, there's always opportunity, and it's just a matter of looking at them. So like if you take the UK as an example, we want to open there. A lot of restaurants sadly have closed down. So is there an opportunity to go and grab some great locations? There definitely is. So I think, it just depends on how risk averse or how much appetite you've got for risk. I've always wanted to buy my business back. I think my relationship with Famous Brands was amazing while it lasted. I think Darren Healy is an incredible leader, and we had a great relationship. But it's my namesake. I wanted to buy it back. And I've got huge plans to grow my own food business, and my own food group with a multiple of brands. So
there's a banker in there, Stephen. And let me extend the question to you, Stephen, as well.
Yeah.
Small business, or rather, let's just say business people, we're all on this call, we're all trying to plan for growth. Is this a time to start looking at acquisitions and mergers?
There's no doubt about it that there will, as you said, be people who own a business who are tired, it's non-core, or just need cash or something like that. The old story is when there's blood on the streets, is the time to take out your checkbook. And there is no doubt about it that there are big opportunities out there, either because people do not have enough, they don't have a balance sheet, but they have quite a good business, and they need to fix their balance sheet, and therefore someone can come along and help them with that. Or alternatively, people say, I've had enough, I can't live with this anymore. Or, as you said, it's non-core. So this is a big opportunity for people who are bold and brave, and I was quite pleased to see how many people were optimistic on the poll, because I think that's very important. You talked about growth. If South Africa can't grow, we're in deep trouble. And so what we need are entrepreneurs who can help us grow. Obviously, we need government to create the right enabling environment and stop, some of the stuff that they've been doing over the past 10 years. But enabling environment for growth, because it's actually entrepreneurs who create the jobs at the end of the day. And when I look at the minister's budget and he says he's going to grow by 3% next year, then 1.7, then 1.5, I want to get sick. If you look at South Africa between 2004 and 2007, we grew by between 4 and 6%. When we hit the financial crisis, we had debt to GDP of 26%. I'm saying net debt, minister says 29, but if you look at net debt, 26%. And his February budget in 2008 was a budget surplus, not a deficit of 16, 17 or 15.8% that he's forecasting now. And so that comes from the fact that we grew as an economy. So it's in all our interests for South Africa to grow.
How do we get it?
Well, you need to, the chiefs there need to take tough decisions. And I'll quote, there's a guy, Pangayira and Bhagati, that wrote a book called Why Growth Matters. They wrote it on India. And between 1950 or 1947, when India became independent, and 1990, India grew by between 3 and 4%. They called it the Hindustan growth rate because they could never get beyond that 4%. And it's because their policies were too left. They were not business-friendly policies. They were exactly like our ANC. And that then this guy, Singh, became Minister of Finance, and he took away the license right, which was if you wanted to open a business, you had to go to the local community and get a license. He scrapped that. And the economic growth rate shifted to between 7 and 9%. And then you saw this big middle class starting to develop in India. And when you grow at that kind of pace, like I don't think we can grow between 7 and 9, but when you start growing at 5 to 6, and you've seen other Asian countries grow at between 5 and 6, like Indonesia, you transform your society dramatically because you've got population growth of 1.5 and economic growth of 5 to 6. And all of a sudden, government's balance sheets start improving and all those kind of things. So we need to get rid of some of, they call it progressive, but I'd say it's not progressive because it pulls you back. Policies that we still see coming out of the ruling party. And we need a shift, actually, economic shift a little bit to the right. And that means we have to accept private capital. We have to say, we've seen with state-owned enterprises how these things are run and the problems that we have with them and how much money is actually being wasted. In fact, in 2007, Eskom's debt was 40 billion rand. Now it's 480 billion. Yeah, it's a massive number. Absolutely. And that comes, well, we know how it got there, but then we see the clean energy projects. They were starting to get the thing moving. In fact, at a World Economic Forum breakfast 2 years ago, a panelist said, the best example of public-private partnerships in the world was the South African clean energy projects. And then, the previous government, ANC government, put a stop to it because they wanted to do nuclear, because that's how they could line their pockets. So there's a lot we can do to create the right enabling environment. We need private sector capital because the government got no more money. Tito has to, or the minister has to, or we call him governor. He prefers governor. Yeah, he has to run that budget very tightly and he has to execute on that budget. Otherwise, we will be at the IMF for money. We will be there.
Now, thanks for that, Stephen, because, I guess that's one of the benefits, Ralph, of no longer being CEO of a South African bank,
I used to say that when I was CEO, Andile. I used to say it when I was CEO.
This is also true. This is also true. No, thanks for the reminder. But Ralph, I'm interested in your thoughts on the role of business and what we can do. Because Stephen is correct, but a lot of us feel disempowered in many ways. I'm sure Natasha would share that. We try our best day to day, and then just government lets us down. We see the things that happen in the politics of the world. And our natural state is not to be involved. Our natural state isn't like Stephen. Stephen is correct in saying that, in correcting me and saying he's been speaking like this. But it's not the natural state of business, which begs the question, then what can we do? What should we be doing? You as MTN, you too need growth. You need South Africa to grow. You don't need South Africa to keep kind of continuously having problems, right? How do you approach that? You're on mute, brother. You're on mute, yeah.
Sorry, I was on mute there. No, look, I mean, I just wanted to build on to what Stephen was saying. I mean, if we really want growth, I think there are a couple of elements that are needed, and business has to step in, big and small business, to drive the agenda. I think, firstly, we do need the confidence, and the polls suggest that people are optimistic. So, without confidence, very little gets done, and actually, growth will always follow confidence. So, I think that's the first point, and South Africa has always had a business community that, always tried to find solutions, even in difficult times. The second is, I would reiterate what Stephen has said, policy clarity and certainty is much needed in South Africa to enable private capital or capital in its totality to seek opportunities. Because without the policy certainty, for a business like MTN, as I mentioned, we spend $2 billion of capex every single year, a third of that in South Africa. So if the policy environment is changing, we become very uncertain. And to Stephen's point, we do know what's really needed around the policy certainty to enable growth in South Africa. I think it's really about putting the growth agenda first, and then saying what is the framework we need to enable the job creation and the deployment of capital to pursue the opportunities that there are. And I guess to link a bit to your question and Stephen's comments, business, government, and broader society, I think the relationship can be enhanced. There certainly is a need for much broader kind of social compact that says we've got to put growth first, and then put the policies that enable growth to support South Africans, and actually just Africans more generally. They're very entrepreneurial. And they will find opportunities, and they will, be able to serve customers within those opportunities to make a profit and look after themselves. So the kind of big state intervention in governments is not working anywhere in the world. It won't work here in South Africa. It doesn't work anywhere in the world. Private capital, obviously with the appropriate regulations and policies, actually can power growth. And we need somewhere much closer to 5% than the kind of the anemic growth that we have today to create the jobs and take South Africa out of poverty. And actually a very important part of that will be the small, medium-sized enterprise. When you look at the world, the really robust economies have a very thriving small, medium type enterprises that are kind of key to the growth of those markets.
Which takes me, we've got 13 minutes left. It takes me to kind of the penultimate question I wanted to make sure that we deal with, so that everyone that's attending this webinar takes away something from kind of your experience and wisdom. And the ultimate question is, I run a business, I employ 50, 100 people, I went through a difficult time, I think I'm kind of making it through, but I need to start thinking about what are the key tenets, behaviors, capabilities, skills that I need, one, as a business leader, but also in my business, to kind of set it up for growth that are universal, that are not kind of specific to industries, etc. In your own experience, and Natasha, I'm going to start with you because you've shared some already about some of the things that you were forced to do in the time, lots of communication, lots of looking at the operations, lots of cash flow preservation. But from a leadership perspective and also business, what would you say for all of us out there in your experience, guys, these are the things I would say pay attention to?
Look, Andile, I think first of all, you've got to make sure when you think you're coming out of COVID and your business is stabilized, is to really make sure that the foundations that you've built your business on, those foundations are strong and they haven't weakened that much. So you really need to be saying, before you're thinking about growth, have I addressed all of the issues, and COVID proofed my business enough to now be able to grow? So that's the first thing. So you can be enthusiastic and you can have the optimism, and we should, but we really need to make sure that we have the key foundations in place. It's almost as if COVID forced us to rebuild our businesses from scratch and put those foundations in place. So I would say the one thing is make sure that those foundations are now rebuilt and really strong. I'll reiterate on communication as a leader. If you're feeling uncertain about your business, staff have had to take salary cuts, you're slowly building them back up to 100% salaries. You still owe suppliers some money, whatever the case may be, is to be communicating with all the various shareholders and stakeholders. So if you owe your landlord some money, talk to your landlord. I think relationships become really important, and they will be. I think, there used to be quite a big distance between landlord and tenant.
Yeah.
COVID's forced landlords and tenants to become,
talking.
they have to talk to each other. There's always like an arm's length sort of thing.
Yes.
And now we understand each other's businesses. You have an understanding of landlord's cost, and a landlord has a better understanding of the retailer's cost.
Yeah.
So communicate, and then do not get comfortable when you have realized that you have tweaked your business enough and you are actually, in some ways, COVID brought some positivity to your business because you had to get lean and mean.
Yeah.
Then don't relax and become comfortable again. Don't start thinking, oh, well, I had 5 baristas, but now I'm making a bit of money, so let me employ another 2.
Yeah.
Keep lean and mean.
Got you.
Preserve your cash. Yeah.
Steven?
Yeah, I think Natasha's hit it on the button. Obviously, as I said earlier, I'm no longer an executive, but I think, a lot of what Natasha was talking about is having the strong foundation. So you've got to have the balance sheet and the operational capability, and you've got to make sure that is very solid, because that gives you the ability to launch new platforms. I think the second thing is culture. And Natasha was talking about communication and all those kind of things. That is around the organizational culture and how you deal with your stakeholders, which include your people, your landlords, your suppliers, and your customers. And that those are, if you can make sure that you have a very good culture, positive culture, enthusiastic culture, particularly with your people, it flows to all your other stakeholders. Where people know that you treat people fairly, you're enthusiastic, you're there to deliver. And, when someone asks you for something, you make sure that you can deliver it. If you can't, you say, I'm sorry, I can't do that very quickly. But communication, don't just hang people out to dry. Always be in their face. And you've got to move quickly, and you've got to pivot, and you've got to show enthusiasm. People want hope. People do not want despair. If you walk around like a misery, cleaning the carpets with your bottom lip, you will not create the enthusiasm that is required to compete in this world. Yeah. And that's very, very important.
In your time as an executive, one thing that Investec was known for in the market was an Investec culture.
Yes. We worked very hard on the culture.
Two things. How were you able to create that?
We created it. Our style was none of us were corporate animals. So we were always argumentative. We had a very open style. Anyone could say anything to anybody. So you were not offended if one of your young employees, new recruits, came and said, I think you gave me a speech in induction and you were talking rubbish. You'd get in, the person knew they could say that to you without fear of retribution. If someone made a mistake, you didn't kill them. It's like a kid riding a bicycle and they fall off. When they're learning to ride, they will fall off. In business, sometimes people will make mistakes. You don't kill them because they learn from mistakes. It's building that kind of culture that people feel safe and enthusiastic and know that that it's not about them. We took the word I out of the organization. It is about we. We are our people, our customers, our suppliers, our stakeholders, our shareholders, our regulators. All those people form part of the we. And you don't favor one versus the other.
Gotcha.
You treat them all with respect.
Lessons for us.
Keep people enthusiastic and give them hope.
I like the visual of your bottom lip sweeping the floor. I can't get that out of my head.
Yeah, well, that's it. The miseries. I used to clean the floor. The floor was always spotless.
Ralph, what do you say to me? I'm that small business owner.
No, look, I mean, much has been said by Natasha and Stephen, but I would add a couple of points. I think the first is, customer focus. It starts with the customer. I mean, I think when businesses succeed, through crisis and out of crisis, I think the ones that are that have the resilience and come through have a very clear focus on the customer. I think is one clear, and sometimes businesses are not as clear about who their customer really is. And it takes a crisis for you to figure out who your customers really are, because there's a lot of adjacencies and periphery sometimes around a business. And in a crisis, it exposes immediately who your customer is and who isn't. And I remember some time back, a colleague of mine forced me to read a book. It was probably in the 2000s, and spoke about the discipline of market leaders, and saying, when you've got a customer focus, you've got to figure out what is it that is particularly special about your business. And I still think, even though 20 years on, that book may have been passed by technology, but it basically says, you either are competing, on product leadership, on operational excellence or customer intimacy, or a slight combination of those three. And being super clear about how you're taking your product to market, because you always have, people have choice, but you really need to figure out, what is it that how you're delivering on that customer focus. The second point is what's been said really around, leadership and culture, because, during difficult times, without the sense of hope and possibility and a future that is better than where you are now, it's very difficult to energize and take people forward. So leadership and culture absolutely matters and comes to the fore, in crisis. Talent, and how do you manage that talent and give them the freedom, to do what they need to do best. Sometimes leaders think they have all the answers. I sometimes say leadership is knowing when to step away and allow the people who really know what needs to be done, and giving them the tools to do that. And then finally, it probably goes without saying, but everybody has a balance sheet. Ensuring that your balance sheet has got headroom to withstand shock, and also to be able to ride through difficulties. And to Natasha's point, in these markets where some people see struggle, a lot of people see opportunities, and they buy into the kind of market falls. And this is where fortunes get made. Fortunes are not made at the top of a cycle; they're actually made at the bottom of a cycle.
Yeah, fortunes are made at the bottom of the cycle, guys. I cannot thank you enough. Thank you so much for sharing your morning with us and helping us think through this very tough topic. And what a great finale to the 10 webinars we've had. You've given us a lot to think about. In fact, I'm going to check in with our poll. If we can put up our second poll right now and just find out how people are feeling now that you guys have helped us think through all of these things today. Listening to the speakers today, has your view changed on the outlook of your business? Number one, I'm even more optimistic that my business will continue to grow and be successful. Number two, I will need to make some changes to my approach if I want to be successful. And three, I am really worried that my business will not survive the current market conditions. So now that you've had a fair sense of what some of our business leaders think, let's hear what you have to say and what your thoughts are. On the other side of this, we'll also hand over to Roy, who will be giving us our very creative way of putting together our minutes of our meeting today. There we go. The results are out. 53% of you are more optimistic that you'll continue to grow and be successful. Good luck. Well done. 47% will need to make some changes to their approach if they want to be successful. So very glad that almost half of you can take away real lessons. And no one is stressed or overwhelmed or overly worried and thinks the world is ending and the sky is falling. We are all very positive. And as Ralph earlier said, confidence is the most important thing, because if there's no confidence, nothing happens. Thank you so much, everybody. I'm going to hand over now to Roy to do his thing from Three Stick Men, who will be playing us back at the minutes of our meeting in a very graphic way. Roy?
All right. So what you should be able to see is my heading for the event: survive and thrive, positioning your business for success. That's a chess piece, obviously. We've all been watching that wonderful show on Netflix, haven't we? Andile started out by saying, we are going to get through this pandemic. And I riffed on that by saying, who sneezed and who's spreading this thing? And please stop, just wear your mask, right? We start with Natasha. She basically, her key message, as I saw it, was stay true to your brand. She talked about being a restaurateur with a psychology degree, so she obviously knows how her people like to eat. Operational efficiencies came out as a really important topic, and she asked people to communicate, and that ties into Zoom, Zoom, Zoom. And that also, I think, is a way of saying, fix your foundations. We know that stuff got broken in this pandemic. Let's fix it. What is your appetite for risk? That's her question, and she is living her talk and eating her words properly. Stephen Koseff, his key message, I think, well, he had several key messages, but he said pent-up demand is definitely in place. People want stuff. We want the end of this pandemic. We need to get out of this stuff. His key message was South Africa has to grow. We need a more business-friendly government environment, and we have to aim for 5 to 6% growth, not the piddly 3%, because that's pretty much going to scupper us. And he looks down on state-owned enterprises, and I've taken on the roads must fall idea, and that is state-owned enterprises must fall. Ralph from MTN, that's him there, I think his message is that digital is the new normal and that MTN is going all out to find ways of adding services on top of just their previous connectivity model. So services, that's how we're going to be communicating, because the new normal is call centers from home, standing around and sort of saying, we have a new way and we're not going back to the old normal. He likes the idea of a growth framework that supports entrepreneurs. And he talked about research that shows that robust economies have thriving small and medium enterprises. And I think the key message here is it all starts with the customer, and that means knowing who your customer is. We'll end off by looking at the results of the two polls. Poll 1 is about the current positioning of our business. The overwhelming majority of people who answered the poll said they are optimistic and they are prepping for growth. Our second poll about our views changing, 52% of us are more optimistic after this call, and 48% of us realize that we need to make some changes. And I think I'm probably in that bin. So I'll just change my view down to my full page view. And that's me. Thanks, Andile. Thanks, everybody else.
Thank you very much, Roy. We appreciate that. I mean, that's a wonderful way of capturing our conversation today. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to an end of our, not only just the session, but our series as well. You will receive an email survey later today. So when you do receive it, please do complete it so that we can take back all the feedback. Thank you very much for joining us all the way from June until now. I hope we found all the 10 webinars useful to all of you guys. I hope you've used them in your own businesses and trying to plan and find your way out of this pandemic, and find a way to also live with it, because it's probably going to be with us for some time as well, so that you can not only survive, but also thrive. Take care and good luck. To my panelists, thank you very much once again.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.